land the plane. This is a story, maybe you remember it from back in May, but I wanted to give you some time to tell that story because when it happened, it was such a shocking headline for everyone to read that a passenger landed this aircraft because the pilot had some issues. So we're going to let you walk us through what happened on that day.
Okay, so really just a 5-minute sum up of what happened is I was just on break, reading a book. I actually had my shoes off. I wanted to become a seaplane pilot, get that rating. So I'm just reading the book, just relaxing, and all of a sudden I hear this page. Bobby comes to the radar room immediately. So I was like, this was like on a Tuesday around 11:30. And I just, all right, this can't be a joke. Put my shoes on real quick, go to the radar room. The supervisor briefs me, hey, we got these passengers flying this Caravan and the pilot's unconscious. We can't wake him up. We're picking you to help them get on the ground safely because you're a pilot, you're a flight instructor, you're the most current. And I said, all right, where do I need to go? He directed me to the radar scope. We're talking to him now on this emergency radio, so nothing's recorded. And I just say to the passenger, Darren Harrison, what do you see? And he says, I see the coast of Florida. I said, all right, we're gonna try to get you on the ground at Boca Raton Airport. So I start pointing out the airport to him. I'm talking to him in my air traffic talk that I normally, airport's 11 o'clock, 5 miles, let me know if you see it. And I realize, hey, that's not gonna work because he might not understand this lingo. So I try to break it down easier. Hey, airport's ahead and to your left, let me know when you see it. So I quickly just say, you know what, this isn't the best option for him. Boca Raton's a one runway, one taxiway, and a lot of buildings and a very congested area. Let's bring him a little further north to Palm Beach, the really big airport. So now I start telling him make a shallow turn to the right, keeping the shoreline off your right side. I start kind of saying, what do you see? Your gauges, what do you have? And he tells me they're dark. I said, well, do you have steam gauge cockpit or do you have a glass cockpit? Finally, as I'm getting these questions answered, my management team bring me Google images of the cockpit. I've never flown a Cessna Caravan, but I fly a lot of small planes, so I'm familiar with a lot of the stuff he's looking at, but not exactly familiar. So now I'm using these diagrams, just kind of like flying as I'm talking to him, just pushing, I'm just looking at him and just talking to him, hey, here's the throttle. To go faster, you push forward. To slow down, you pull it back. Here's the trim wheel. If you're feeling pressure on the controls, you can roll that forward to relieve that pressure or roll it back to relieve the pressure. And where the flap lever is. So he says, I don't have any flying experience. I find out there's another passenger on board because I can hear someone talking. Some say, what do you have? Do you have airspeed? Do you have altimeter? What instrument? He said, I don't have airspeed. The other passenger, yeah, you have airspeed. So some of his gauges were off, but some of them were on. And he did have some backups. But he said, don't worry, we have your, I can see how fast you're going, I can tell what altitude you're at, and I can tell what direction. So luckily we had very good weather. It was just gusty northeast winds. So he's heading north. There's some really big TV antennas, like 1,600 feet, and there's 3 of them. And I told him, I don't want you to descend too far because I don't want you to get too close to this. So he starts to descent, he's holding his head really good, he's descending. I said, okay, don't descend anymore. He gets past the antenna, so I was like, finally. That's one hurdle to get past. So I just said, now you're gonna see Palm Beach Airport off your right side. Let me know when you see it. And he was 2,000 feet, and I didn't want to rush him for this landing because he's only about 4 miles away from the airport. And I wanted to get it right on the first time. So now I'm feeling a little bit more confident because he's taking my instruction, and I'm seeing the changes in his speed and stuff and his altitude. So he sees the airport off his right, and he says, hey, what about flaps? Because he's been in small planes before, and he sees what the pilot does, but he doesn't really know what he's doing exactly. I said, we can use flaps if you want to, but you don't have to. And I said, if you want to try it, we can. So he puts flaps in, and now the plane starts flying a little erratically. He said, hey, the plane's not flying right. And I said, okay, it's all right. You don't have to use flaps. Go ahead and raise those flaps back up. And then he was okay again. So now I said, I just want you to make a shallow turn to the left, and we're gonna line you up for a long final on this runway 10 left, which is our long runway, 10,000 feet. So we start talking about the speed, the throttle. Hey, you're going a little fast. Let's go ahead and pull that throttle back, and I don't want you to go any slower than 130. And I just picked a number. Usually the Caravan cruise is about 160. And I noticed that he was starting to slow, but I said, I don't want you to go too slow because I want the plane to keep flying. I don't want this to stall. So he's making this turn, he's starting to slow down, and I say, okay, now that he's lined up the runway, we need to get you lower. So I want you to just start your descent again. And now I just start thinking, what is he looking at? Kind of like I'm a flight instructor, so I have some younger pilots that aren't as good at landing. So I just say, all right, start telling them about the runway. So I said, as you're far out, you're lined up with this runway, it's gonna look narrow, but as you get in closer, it's gonna get wider. And when it gets wider, you pull back the throttle and pull back on the control. And I just kept telling him that as he's going down, and I'm giving him his altitude as he's getting in closer. You're at 1,500 feet, 4 miles out, your speed looks okay. Just keep that descent going. Just keep talking him all the way down the final. And then around 300 feet, his tag drops off our radar scope, which is normal because he gets below the radar sweep. So, but my heart dropped because I'm just in this dark room, this radar room. I'm not in the control tower, and now I'm supposed to help this person land this plane.
Yeah.
So I said, "Are you still there?" And he says, "I'm here." I said, "Okay, just remember the runway's going to look narrow, and then it's get wider. And when it gets wider, that's when you pull back that power, and you pull back on the controls to transition for that landing." So then about 5 or 10 seconds go by, and he says, "I'm on the runway. How do I stop this thing?" So I said, "Just put your feet to the top of the pedals and apply pressure with your toes." And then he says, "Okay, I got it stopped. Do you want me to turn it off the runway?" And I said, "Don't worry about it. The fire trucks will meet you because they're at their little standby locations when he's landing." And they went out and they met him, and he said, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate it." And he said, "How do I turn the plane off?" Well, my supervisor had flown in the military. He flew bigger planes. And he said, I look at him, "How do you stop this thing?" And he said, "Just pull all the levers back." So he pulled them all back, and then he was gone. And then after that, I was just like, "Wake me up from this dream, please."
Yeah.
So the radar room was, really happy. He's coming by, shaking me, "Hey, you did it, you did it." And I was just kind of like an adrenaline rush, but also at the same time couldn't believe that we pulled it off. And I'm glad. It felt really good to help these people and possibly save their lives,
Absolutely.
Even though Darren was the one flying, I felt like a big part of it and that I contributed.
Absolutely, yeah. And so the pilot of the plane, what happened with him that it put it in this position?
So the pilot, Ken Allen, was transported to the hospital, and luckily he was in a good area that he could go to a spot that specializes in the surgery that he needed. But he suffered from a torn aorta, so a cardiac event. And it has a very low survival rate, the surgery. And within a week, a couple days later, he woke up, but within a week, he was going to live. So he made a full recovery.
It's wonderful.
And he's working on getting his medical back. But I've met him, I've met all the guys. They came over for tours, shook hands, hugged it out. And as I was telling you before, Darren Harrison, when he came over for his tour, he told me he just wants to get home. He lives in Lakeland and his wife was pregnant. He just wanted to get home to his pregnant wife.
It's so wonderful you were able to get him home to his wife and to his baby. So it is incredible, an incredible story. You obviously went right into the mode of how do I help him land the plane, and did you not really get a chance to think about it until the plane was stopped, about what was happening?
Right, so I didn't get a chance to really think about it. It's kind of like shooting from the hip, but being a pilot, being a flight instructor, being an air traffic controller, kind of put all those together. I have worked at some events that might have helped too, like Sun and Fun, working at Sun and Fun Air Show, that just doing stuff that's a little different than what your normal stuff would be. So I have been in some weird situations like that, but just putting all those skills together. But a lot of it was just, shooting from the hip. I'd tell them something, then I'd say stand by, and I'm just using a couple seconds to think what I want to tell them next. But I didn't know what I wanted to tell him next, but I know that he needed my help. And I know that I had to stay calm, even though I might be a little panicky inside, but I didn't let that show. I just said, they have nobody else. You got to do what you can do to help them.
Yeah. Where does that
all
come
the
from?
people in the room were counting on me to help them. I was like, I do not want to fail at this.
Right. Where does that come from? Is it experience? Is it because how do you remain so calm in that moment and be able to walk somebody through something? He's not a pilot. He's never been in a cockpit before. How do you do that?
I think, just over the years, learning so much, growing as a pilot, and then I go to work. I'm a full-time air traffic controller, but I'm a flight instructor by part-time. But just kind of knowing both sides of it and experiencing both sides and kind of, he's not a pilot, but I remember my first solo, so I know how he can feel like alone I've listened to a lot of stuff on YouTube with accidents, and that even a pilot that's in distress, how he feels, and he wants like the controller talking to him,
Yeah.
just to keep him calm or know that someone's there. So I made sure, even if what I was saying wasn't important or I've already repeated, I made sure that I kept talking and let him talk and try to understand what I'm saying to help him just feel like, hey, somebody's here for me.
Yeah, and we're gonna make it.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it to the ground. That
But
had to
I
have
am
been.
naturally a calm person,
Yeah.
but even though I'm calm, I'm still a little panicking inside because I've never been encountered with this.
Sure.
We do practice some like unusual stuff, but nothing like this.
My goodness. Well, right place at the right time and the right person for that job. Absolutely. It's an incredible
you.
story. Thank you for what you did. And thank you for coming by and sharing it with us here. We really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks so
first
much.
time NBAA. It's been a great experience,
Yeah?
meeting a lot of great people.
Great. Wonderful. Maybe you'll be back.
Yeah, I hope so.
You hope so. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Oh,
your time.
thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll be right back.